Welcome to Office Hours, where we've been answering your media and tech-related production questions every day since March of 2020. Alexander Knight in Port Coquitlam, British Columbia, is our reader today. Alexander, what have we got?
First question is coming in this morning from Douglas Carmichael. When would you carry a Phabrix to a show site, and how does one learn to use and read one effectively?
Alex Lindsay's going to help us out here. Alex?
Pretty much every major event that I've worked on, there's somebody in the team that has a Phabrix. I've never owned a Phabrix, but I've always wanted to own them. But the entry level cost, is actually about $5,500. And I've often thought about it. And most of the time, there are little handheld Phabrixes that are there to interrogate your video signals. But it's very common for us to rent or to have somebody have one with them. It looks at almost everything that you would have within your video signal. And typically we're using SDI when we're using it, but it also supports 2110. I think some of them actually support HDMI. So it'll show you everything that's in that file. Now the desktop versions or the truck versions have a lot more information, but the little portable one is going to give you all your major scopes. It can actually look at analyze test signals that are being sent through the system, or it can actually generate some of those test signals as well. The best way to learn how to read most of those items is to get something like Nobe Omniscope. They're very close to each other as far as the type of things that are there. So most of the tutorials that you would see there are going to apply to many of the pieces of the Phabrix. And then after that, it's going out and doing it, and looking at it. I mean, I think that you can you'll find that there's certain things like the eye and a couple other things that aren't in Omniscope. I don't actually know why, but anyway, but those are the only things that I would that may not be there. But it's a really powerful device. Again, when you're doing a larger event and you need to generate some signal, you need to analyze some signal. You need to see if everything's going well. Or if there's anything that needs to be adjusted. When you're building cables, a lot of times, if we're building them on site, having a Phabrix there to plug it in, we can often analyze those signals, make sure that the cable is built properly. So those are some of the things we use it for.
Let's go to our next question.
This one's a QR code question from Mark Sanderson in Chesterfield, UK. I went to the Oasis concert at Wembley Stadium at the weekend. They were keying the band members on top of and underneath the graphics on the large screens. How do they do this?
Well, the Gallaghers are touring again. Courtney Gooden, what do you think?
How do they create those fabulous screens? Well, you see they have a pretty good switcher probably at a concert like that. Things like a Ross switcher, a Sony switcher, a Grass Valley switcher, or even the higher-end Blackmagic switchers like the 2ME, the Constellations. What the ME stands for is Mix Effects Bus. And you got to think of each of those switchers has, call it multiple reentry. Each Mix Effects Bus is a layer. So you can composite multiple signals on each layer in the Mix Effects bus, and then you can take the output of that Mix Effects bus and route it into the next Mix Effects bus. That's why 4ME is 4 Mix Effects buses, etc. So what they do is they just have to figure some way of extracting the image of the band. If they're in front of a black background, they can use a luminance key or to pull them out of the background, or they can use a chroma key if there's some color behind them. But then they put them on a layer, and they put the background on a layer, and they sum those layers up in the mixer, and that's how you end up with your multiple layers on top and some other things on top of them. So downstream keys are generally thought of as added later or higher up in the layer mix, so they're usually the last thing to go over the top. And as you add layers, you end up with a stack. You can rearrange the layers at any time by choosing the order that those Mix Effects buses are in. And so that's how you end up with graphics, the background layered on top of the band, or sometimes the band layered on top of the background, etc.
Alex Lindsay.
Yeah. We've been able to isolate folks using image processing for about 25 years, but only in the last probably 5 or 10 years have we been able to do it in real time. Oftentimes, it might be done in the switcher. It's not usually done in the switcher. It's usually delivered to the switcher from some kind of real time compositing tool. And these real time tools are like Resolume, Notch. The one that's probably the one that I see the most is Notch. In fact, I think I have a video of that. Let me see. This is actually from Dead & Company, and what you'll see here. Now, this might have been just doing a simple thing, but this is definitely notch, and so you can see it as he's playing. Now, it's actually selecting part of his body. It's actually not a Luma key because if you look at it, it's pulling more than that out, and it's generating particles from his body in real time, and that's so a lot of these real time compositors, and again, the one that I run into probably the most. I was just in a meeting going, suggesting notch, and they're like, oh yeah, that's what we're using for this thing. So Resolume and Notch are the two that we see that do this type of effect. And they are very powerful tools that can do a lot of effects. And what they're doing is they're analyzing that image, and they're being able to cut that person out using some version of a difference key, which is that I look at the background, I decide what's not moving, I decide what the foreground is. But there's a lot of math that can make that a lot more effective. So those are the kind of technologies that are often used. If I was going to guess and I looked at some effect on a screen at a concert, I would guess notch.
Let's see. Next question.
This one is Sean Johnson in New York, and he's asking, building a small podcast room, considering the OBSBOT Tail 2 AI-powered PTZR 4K cameras. Anyone have any experience with those?
I suspect we do. Ronnie Hofsway, you want to start us off?
Yes, I've been using this from time to time on the show floor. I never owned one, so I have to emphasize that. This is the camera we are talking about. So what is kind of cool with these cameras is that they support both USB, they support HDMI, and they support 3G SDI. And I think the HDMI is 4K. I think it's up to 120 if I remember correctly. The 3G is, of course, probably limited to 30, I would guess. It also have a LAN port, and you can control it, and of course, small inputs and outputs. The one thing that I would say is it's kind of a small sensor, so even if it's a little bit bigger than the Insta360 that I have been using for a long time and for many different projects, I guess the OBSBOT will be a little bit less noise in the low light situations. It's still 4K. It has if I remember correctly, the tests I did, it has pretty low noise and it has a good zoom range due to the small chip and the lens that zooms in, and it also has a battery pack included, so you can actually run it totally off-grid, so to speak. But the thing is that these small sensors, they don't give you the good, nice depth of field that you can see here behind me. I've taken my lens, which is on a CVE10, and adjusted that to 1.8 to not have too much blurred background, and that is something that you can't achieve in full on these very, very small sensors. So just be aware that even if the pictures and in a small setting where there is a short distance between your subject and the camera position in a small room, that will be even more difficult to achieve. So just be aware of that.
Alexander Knight.
Yeah, a lot of what Ronnie said. Define small and how many people are you going to be putting in this room. If it's anything like my little home studio here, which is about 700 square feet, which I can comfortably maybe fit 4 people, as someone who's used smaller sensors, I can tell you, even if you get the lighting right, you're not going to get any kind of bokeh or any kind of good separation between the background and the foreground, especially if that person is, if you've got someone sitting on a couch and that couch is really close to the wall. It's really, really hard. I wouldn't go smaller than a micro four thirds sensor camera. I've switched all my cameras to a micro four thirds sensor with a Sigma lens that can, fully open at like f1.4. So to get as much of that separation between the foreground and the background. And just to give you an example here, once I move to micro four thirds, and you can see in this example here, I've got, let me just switch to this here. You can see that this person's sitting on a couch, and I've pulled this couch out as much as I can from that wall. It's only about maybe not more than 2 feet from that wall, and I put these lighting fixtures on here. When I used to have smaller sensor cameras, everything in the background would look in focus, and it would look all uniform and just kind of flat and boring. So if you do want that kind of bokeh in a tight environment, you're going to want to move to a bigger sensor.
Hey, don't forget, we are driven by your questions. If you'd like to throw a question into the process, you can go into officehours.global/join. That's how you kind of get into the system. We'll send you an email. And then once you're inside, you have access to the entire question and answer system. And it's really a fascinating place to hang out during the show because there's a lot of discussion of everything we're talking about in the Mukana Q&A. So again, that's officehours.global/join. Next question.
This one's from the QR code Crystal in Bradenton, Florida. I need suggestions for a simple, possibly tripod mountable switcher to have a static image title card and 2 cameras via SDI or HDMI. Audio would come from main camera via the video cable. I need HDMI output to feed a LiveU Solo Pro. Could be powered by an Anker Solix. Thanks.
Alex Lindsay is going to help you out here. Alex?
Yeah, the question is now, if you're doing all HDMI, you may be limited in the distance in which you can run something to somewhere else. But in general, I wouldn't want to put my switcher right next to where I'm doing the cameras. Now, you can put a controller there. You could have a Stream Deck. You could have it would require another computer to be in between. So that might work for you. We've built controllers. If we just had 3 things, we literally will build them and put them in a some kind of little pie and stick them in a little box that we print. We had one where we had it was part of a draft, and they wanted to make sure that if they had to talk and they wanted to blank out our screen, they just hit a big button. And so we built this big button, and it talked to our switcher, and they could just hit the button, and it would go where it needed to go. The question is, do you need to see it? Do you need to see the video? So what I'm thinking is, you may be a 1-person show or a 2-person show, and you may have a situation where you're trying to look at the video while you're moving the camera, and so that's the question. Because it feels like when you say I want to have it mounted onto a tripod, I feel like you've got one lock off, you're moving one, and you're trying to control both of them and go to a slide. And if you're doing that, you just have to think about your monitoring as well. What are you going to see, and how you're going to work it? If someone asked me to do it tomorrow, like I don't have a lot of time to go grab things, I'd probably get an ATEM Mini, and I'd run an HDMI cable over to the second camera, and I'd put the ATEM Mini there. I'd probably have a little 7-inch monitor, 10-inch monitor that I could see that, and I'd run it from there. That's probably my knee-jerk reaction there.
Courtney Gooden.
Now, I haven't used these, but if you see Jeffrey Powers on a panel, he might re-ask those questions. There's a thing called a yellow box, which is a switcher that's built in with a built-in monitor. It's a touchscreen operated switcher. It has the Pro has 4 HDMI inputs. It doesn't have SDI inputs. So if you have SDIs coming out of a farther away camera, you would have to get a little box to convert it from SDI to HDMI. But this does encoding, recording, monitoring, all in one thing. It's mountable on a tripod. It can be powered off of 12 volts, I believe, or a USB-C input for power. So you might have to arrange something like that. So this might do it for you, but it's not going to be done without some external equipment to convert your signals so that you have a way of monitoring, seeing the multiple cameras, doing the overlays, and switching all in one box.
Alex?
Mickey pointed out that the Stream Deck network dock will allow you to remote a Stream Deck with just a PoE Ethernet connection. And David Brady said, I built a PoE Pi companion. Then just plug the deck into that, and you get mobile power.
Yeah, I'll just make a small comment on brain power, because this is something I learned real early. I in a lot of cases, when I was doing a lot of speaker shooting, I tried to do this where I was able to switch a few things. And every time, I always got to the point very rapidly where I added one more thing, and suddenly my performance on everything just took a nosedive. To me, if you're just doing pan, tilt, zoom cameras, and if you have presets, this is possible, and you can do a good show like that. But boy, if you're trying to operate a camera and think about anything else other than being in the moment with your camera operation, my experience was it suffered greatly, and I would miss cues a lot because just in that moment, I was thinking about switching rather than operating the camera, and that's never a good thought in production. Alex, you wanted to get back in?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of doing some kind of training operations all the time, as you can see. So, but I also do it locally, where I'm doing things where I'm engaging folks that want to learn how to do something locally, and so a lot of times they're not making any money. We just go out and work on it. The reason I say this is because oftentimes it means I start building a network of people that I could hire to work on things when there is money. So I'm constantly doing these things for free, but it's really part of my, as far as I'm concerned, part of workforce development inside of my company, and I've been doing that for 30 years. I'm constantly looking for ways to find more people, because because I'm guessing that you're trying to do all this in one place because you don't have anybody else. so and finding ways to have other people included is a great way to make it a lot easier.
Thank you for the question, Chris. Stop back if you have experiences and let us know how things work for you. Let's go to our next question.
This one is coming in from Talalak Lopez, Waterman in Galisteo, New Mexico, USA. Apple app development. Can one of you explain the app review process with Apple? I want to send an app to TestFlight for some comprehensive testing before submission to the App Store. What is the process for TestFlight versus submission?
Jason Bache is going to help you out here.
So it's been a couple years since I've done this, but I'll answer the question. It really just comes down to signing, how your developer certificate needs to be signed before it gets released and pushed out via TestFlight. It's relatively simple if you're going to do a private beta where it's a known set of people that are just directly having it sent to them, as opposed to a public beta, as opposed to a full-on release. There's not much to a TestFlight. You submit it to TestFlight, it gets signed appropriately, and then you basically get a link that you can either share, or you get a box where you can send email addresses to people that you want to test. So it's quite simple.
Alex?
Yeah, and you just have to provision it correctly. In Xcode, you'll export it out, you'll save it out, and then put it up in the App Store. I believe it's the App Store Connect, and you'll get it into the TestFlight program. But the TestFlight is not a submission. So you get it up into TestFlight. People are able to test it. The goal there is for it to be fluid. So you can have, if it's internal testing, you can have up to 100 people. If it's external testing, up to 10,000. And then you get to the point where you're happy with it, and then you submit it to them. And you got to make sure you follow all the rules that Apple has. But generally, if you're making a production app and it's breaking some of Apple's rules, you're probably thinking too hard.
Next question.
This one is the QR code question from Tim Mann in Melbourne, Australia. What's the panel's thoughts on MDM managed Macs in production?
Ronnie Hofsoy is going to start us off here. Ronnie?
Yeah, so I was really impressed the first time we had more than 10 Macs online in the studio. And I was thinking to just apply MDM to all of them and start managing everything in a breeze. I'm not running MDM anymore. The thing is that when you are in a rush and you need to do something really quickly on one of the machines, there is too many obstacles to actually get to do the things that you would like to do right there and then. So it's more of a hindrance, but of course in a more, I would say, stable environment where everything is smooth and you don't have to do stuff in a more flexible way. So we use all our machines out in venues, inside in the studio. We have them on small presentations or corporate events. So we use them for a lot of more flexible use. And then there is always something that you have to install or change or modify to get things to work. And having MDM managing everything on a top level, I just call it a limitation. It was too much of a hindrance for me to trust us and the team to be able to do all the things we needed to do. So we removed it from all the machines.
Jason Bache.
Ronnie's exactly right. It really depends. If you really know what you're doing and you absolutely have a perfect pipeline that you just need adherence to, then sure, it will absolutely work. And you better be exactly certain that you have it exactly right, because if not, you are just creating problems. Alex Lindsay.
Yeah. I had about 40 devices on it with Pixel Core, or maybe more than 40 via Meraki. You can set up the set of rules too. You can force everything, and you're doing installs across and managing everything. But it also is just a layer that sits at the bottom of your Mac that lets you, if I need to, I can log into it. Whether it's a device, and I can also see it. So I knew where all of our laptops, for instance, were anywhere in the world at any given time. In fact, one got stolen, and we used to follow it around. There was no way we were never going to go get it back, but we did know where it was. It took us a little while to figure it out. That we figured out the whole thing. Like that this guy stole it. He gave it to his son. His son plays games. His son lives at. We knew what house the two houses that his son lived at. While he was playing those games, because we could see everything on the back end, and so it was more of a, like, we were at lunchtime at production. I was like, I wonder where the computer is today, and so we'd log into it and see what was going on, we felt like it was reasonable given that he stole my computer. So anyway, but we didn't do anything more than track the computer, but we figured out most of the story behind it. So if I had a large fleet, I would absolutely have MDM, because it does mean that it's very hard for them to know that it's there, or an average person, and it is useful. Like if I actually wanted to try to go track that down, I probably could. But the ability to lock the computer, the ability to track the computer, the ability to open it up and look at the screens, all of those things are available to you with an MDM, and sometimes you can do installs and other things.
It's like you had a very small, limited person video game. Where's the box today?
Let's open up and look at the map. I wonder where that computer is. Oh, he's there.
Where'd it go? Yeah. Next question.
This one's from Tim Snyder in Louisville, Kentucky. Had major issues with my Videon Edgecaster encoder and timecode this weekend. Videon suggested adding a converter, example, Decimator, in front of the Videon to stabilize the image. ATEM is set at 59.94, SDI Level B. Have you seen this before?
Courtney's going to dive into this. Courtney?
I'm not sure what your problem was. You mentioned timecode. Encoder and timecode was the problem. I'm wondering if your timecode source is synchronized with your video. That can sometimes be a problem, because if the timecode frame rate doesn't match the video frame rate, you'll end up with incongruities. And sometimes it has to be gen-locked. Now, I don't know if this Edgecaster really cares about the synchronization of the timecode and the video input, but so that might be what your problem is. I'm not sure what was creating the problem, but there are sync boxes like the Denicky SB2 and SB3s that have will generate timecode, and it will generate it in sync with a reference signal. So you feed it a reference signal, SDI or video black burst reference signal. It'll synchronize the timecode so that your video and your timecode always changes to the next frame number at exactly the end of a vertical frame. So that makes sure your timecode is in sync with your video frame rate. So maybe something like that would correct your problem. And I don't know what problem this was creating, but you might look into that, getting a sync box generator that has tri-level sync generator out, or a reference in, so that it can sync the timecode to the video.
Alex Lindsay.
So many years ago, SMPTE was trying to get this the SDI A level format figured out, and they were taking a long time because committees take a long time. And Blackmagic wanted to release something with 3G now, so they created what was called Blackmagic SDI B, and this was so that they could start releasing their 3G products faster. And it had its own vagaries to it. I'm not sure exactly what the difference is between A and B, but I can tell you that some devices can't see A, and so can't see B. So if it's a non-Blackmagic device, there is a chance. Most things can see both of them now, but you really should have it on SDI A. There were reasons to not do that in the early days, so 10 years ago, if you wanted to talk to the cameras via the SDI return from a Blackmagic switcher in the cameras, you needed to use SDI-B, which made it more complicated because then you'd have to deliver it to a SAT truck and get it back to SDI-A. There was a moment where it was complicated, but now you should just go to SDI-A, and you should find that if it's a little switch in your switcher, all the Blackmagic switchers have them. Go in there and switch that to SDI-A, and all your problems will probably disappear.
Next question.
This one's from Sean Johnson in New York. I recall Alex mentioning Pixel Core projects where panelists were filmed in the round. Can you provide a quick overview of camera placement and shot strategy for that format? Have clients interested? 7 panelists with 3 to 4 cameras, black set. Thanks.
I was going to call Alex first, but he was a little late with his hand, so Ronnie got in first. But Ronnie, you want to say something before Alex takes us through his setup?
Yeah, so what we tend to do is to divide the circle in 3 equal size of approximately 120 degrees. And I have a picture of something similar. This is not a camera production, but this is a production where you clearly can see the thirds. So people are grouped in 3 groups. One is the close to the camera, and then you see one to the left and one to the right on both sides of the display. So what we used here is having a display at the end of the corridor, if we can call it a corridor. And what I tend to do when we use cameras for these types of productions is to have the camera where the display is, so that you shoot directly through the corridor first, and then over to the people, and then you can have the people in the background, or have a look at the presenter that is standing. There is a female standing in the middle that you barely can see, and we can shoot directly to her, depending on what way she is heading or watching. And the biggest problem with these setups are actually becoming or telling the person that is presenting that they need to move. They can't just be standing in one place. So we have, if you can see the woman in red here, that's one of the leaders of the conference, or the chairs, and she was constantly moving around the venue and had the presenter follow her, and that's the reason why she wore a red jacket as well, so that they could clearly see her as she moved around.
Ronnie, I'm curious, are there cameras and monitor positions at each of the spokes, or just the one that we're seeing there? And if so, what's in the other one?
In this production, we didn't have cameras, but I would have cameras in almost the same position when we have cameras in these productions.
Okay. Alex, dive in.
So the origin story behind this kind of production was actually a Virgin Disruptors with Richard Branson in 2014. So that would have been 16 years ago, or 11 years ago. And they came to us and they said they wanted to do this in the round. And I was like, this is a horrible idea. So I was like, this is a horrible idea. I was like, there's a reason that the cameras are on one side and the people are on the other side, so that we don't get cameras in the shots and we have control over the lighting and everything else. But they were very adamant that this is the way they wanted to do the event. And for me, it changed everything about how I do production when I want to do people in the round. Or I always want to do people in the round because of it felt so close. So the big advantage is that you pull everyone in. And I'll show you. Actually, I have a video. The Virgin Disruptors has a video on there on YouTube here. I'll just show you a real quick little. So here's the shot of. It's kind of, this is just behind the scenes. So you're just going to see like little people. That's Danielle. Hold on. That's my producer. Anyway, so I didn't realize she ended up in that shot. She works at Apple now. Let's see here. So let's see. There's Richard Branson there. You can kind of see the pan. So you can so you can see everyone kind of seated around there. And then if I go to, here is the shot. This is us setting up for it. So what we did in this case is we had 6 people, which was a little bit more challenging. We used this is an Airstar, and that we felt like it gave a real great kind of living room kind of feel to it. So it was a 6-foot ball that lit up everyone, and it just really felt very inclusive. And so we kept that, and we kept on developing for it. And so here is the Final Cut user group. I don't think Bill was in this one, but you can see how that big 6-foot ball there's Mark. So now what we did here for the Final Cut user group, this is in a black studio. So there's me with a lot more dark hair, well, a little bit more dark hair. Anyway, so now the way this was set up for the Final Cut user group was that we were in, we had a table that was, it was 5 sides, and we put Wacom tablets in front of each of us, and then we all sat here. And now, so we are all sitting in this area here. Now the Wacom tablets all went back to the same. They all went back to the same computer, so any one of us could do what I'm doing here: draw on top of things and look at Final Cut and circle things and move things over. And so that was kind of a really fun way to kind of interact and talk about Final Cut. But the secret to the cameras was that we shot through the gaps, through the gaps here like this. Like this. So this is where our cameras, were for each person. So there was a camera for every person. Now we had a high and wide that was up here as well, so we could do kind of a wide shot of all of us. I couldn't quite find it in the video cutting through it, but we had a high and wide there. I had dreams of putting a camera on an arm, if you look at it from the side, kind of like this, and have it swinging, just slowly rotating around us to get a shot. But I never got that built. I saw it in a studio in Zimbabwe, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna use that, but never did. Anyway, this is what works, I think, really well. Once you stop having a camera per person, it works a lot less well. So I'd rather have more cameras, and not operate them, and possibly have. So instead of having 3 operated cameras, just put 5 or 7 unoperated cameras, and then have maybe an operated camera that is capturing something. But the idea is you put those cameras all in. You think you want 3 or 4 cameras, but I'll tell you, 7 makes it so great. Like, it is a straight-on shot, because anytime you have an odd number of people, you'll be able to shoot all the gaps. It's just the nature of geometry. So you'll always be able to shoot a gap. We've done up to 7 people in it, but as soon as you go to an even number, it's a little weird. And what we would do is we would typically, it's not a perfect circle. After that, what you do is you kind of pull it, and then it's not as good. So we always try to, when we do this, when we design it, we always design it around 5 or 7 or 3. I've never done 9. I guess you could do 9. That'd be crazy. Anyway, so but that's how we did that setup. We had and we built the state. This was my setup space. We had to clear it when we did this. We had to pull everything. There's a whole bunch of stuff in the parking lot. But we had Rose brand curtains that went all the way around that closed it off to black. You want to make sure that a lot of that lighting works pretty well, but you do have to kind of cover it on the top to make sure you're not lighting the black areas, and you're crushing the blacks a little bit to make them go to black. But it is a really nice. I loved the format. I really, really enjoyed and we've done it in other environments where we do a 2/3 circle. So we pull it around. In some high profile individuals, their security doesn't want people all the way around them. So in those cases, we've gone 2/3 or 3/4 around them. But what happens is you end up with 200 people, and no one is more than 25 feet from the person talking, and that is a really great. I find it to be a great experience. If you're going to do it with just a black box, you don't have to worry about the chairs. If you do it with the chairs, the only thing I'll say is that I'm a big fan of putting a C-stand right in the center and running a string out and using it to align all of my chairs, into the circle. A lot of people can get they'll do it the best they can. The opening shot when you use a string is really cool looking, because it's just it has this great curved, and everything it looks perfect. And it won't look perfect for more than about 10 minutes. But everyone start moving it around. But there's something about that geometric that feels very thoughtful, very intentional. Because anybody who does production knows it's hard. So I would suggest that. But in the black box, I found that was the most conversational way to have people sit. They're all sitting to each other. It's very natural. They're not leaning past each other. So anytime I get a chance to do a physical event where people are going to chat, it's very much like this, what we have in Zoom. It's just that it's in a room. And it was, I thought, Bill, you can tell me, you were in a bunch of those.
It was so natural because you end up having no idea that you're on a show and you're just talking to individuals. They're all lit, so you can see their faces, so you can interact with them. You can see whether they have a reaction to what you're saying. I think that's what makes it so natural. A standard panel where you've got 6 people looking out at the audience, that's all they're doing is they're just performing for the audience. In Alex's setup here, we were talking to each other, which is a wholly different aesthetic, and it was very natural and very comfortable.
I will say that it is the way to do these. I mean, I started with, no, this is a horrible idea, but I will say that I will suggest it every single time someone gives me the opportunity to do anything like this. Is like, hey, why don't we put them in the round? We did one where we were able to use like stadium seating in the round around it. Actually built them. So anyway, and that was the best. It was like a black box theater, but it was curved, and it was a person in the center, and it just felt so like an envelope of interaction. It was really cool.
Ronnie?
Yeah, so when we're talking about table placement, what we found for conference setups, just going to show this really quick. We found out that this triangle setup is really, really good. So we have the chairman where the camera is positioned. Then we have the camera on each of the corners where you see there is room for placing the cameras, and one at the top angled towards this camera. So this is something that gives a really good conversation between the people sitting. Everyone has eye contact, and everyone has, you can observe the non-verbal body language much easier. So that is something we've implemented in almost every table setups where we have board meetings.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, the dynamic of these kind of presentations, but I think we're learning a lot about how to engage an audience. And, in some shows you want presenters presenting to the wide audience. What this is magic for is if you've got 3 or 4 experts and you just want to hear them interact, because I think when they're interrogating each other, they have better questions generally than audience questions. They're more exploratory if you pick the right people on the panel, and I think you get more information out faster than this. That's just my personal feeling, but it was a lot of fun to do. Next question.
This one's from Tony Mobley, Noonan, Georgia. I have 2 Mac Minis M1s stacked in my setup. They are both seeming to run hot. There is airflow in the front and back. Suggestions?
Yeah, Jason Bache is going to try to help you out here. Jason?
So I've done a lot of this, and I have yet to have any problems with an M1 or better Mac Mini running hot. My immediate thought is that you should get an air compressor, unplug the whole rig, see if you can blow them out. Maybe you've got some dander in there, but I mean, it's ugly right now, but I've got three Mac Minis stacked on top of each other. I guess you can't see the very bottom one because it's below some storage. No cooling issue whatsoever. It's ugly, but nothing runs hot. So yeah, I would try to blow it out.
Alexander Knight.
Tony, I'm assuming that this is just a feeling that you haven't actually done any measurements with any kind of device to check the temperatures, but I wouldn't recommend stacking them. I would put them side by side, or another alternative would be what some people do. I don't know if you've got some kind of server rack where you can put them in, but what some people do is they just flip them on their side, and that way you're getting airflow passed on both the top and the bottom, because there is a cooling vent there, or an exhaust or intake vent at the bottom there. So that's what I would do. Maybe try flipping them on their side if you think there's an issue. I mean, you can really do tests to see if you're stressing the machine. For example, if you're editing a video and encoding something, if the CPUs start to throttle, it will be pretty obvious. So you'll have to do some tests to see if it's actually getting affected by that.
Courtney Gooden.
Yeah, and you might make sure that there's not some source of heat on the desk. Remember, on the Mac Minis, of the M1s, the intake, there's a fan, and the intake and the output are in the foot, on the base of that, and they also radiate heat through the aluminum. So if you stack one on top of the other, the heat coming out of the fan is going into the intake on the next one above it. I mean, the heat coming out of the aluminum is going into the fan input on the second one. So, and remember, heat because of convection rises in a room of normal temperature air. So, as Jason was saying, if you set them like books on a bookshelf, the fans will then take in and blow out heat, and that heat will go up away from the other Macs. So if you're having a temperature problem, putting them on their sides so that the fans are not, so that the aluminum and the fan intake are not above or below the one below it. That will help the airflow quite a bit.
Alex?
Yeah, Alex Knight, so he's here, but he suggested in the forum that you should use iStat menus, and I'd to take a look at it to know whether it really is a problem or not. I have 5 of these stacked on top of each other on my desk, and there is no heat issue. Like they are cold to touch. They run fine. These are all just first generation Mac Minis that I use as service, kind of all the different services for my presentations and so on and so forth, and I have no problem with them. So the other thing I would ask is, what is the ambient temperature of your room? I will admit that my office, the ambient temperature stays in the mid 60s. So it could be that just everything works better in my room because it has its own air conditioner. so it's not. I don't have a house air conditioner. My room stays at a very cold temperature most of the time because I think better that way.
Very, very California kind of way to proceed. In Arizona, we never want the room air conditioners.
My wife likes it very hot, and I like it cold. And so we don't use the air conditioning in the rest of the house, and it becomes pretty tropic during the summer. I just said, well, I'll just get an AC unit for my room, and my room stays ice cold most of the time. It's great.
Alexander Knight, you want to get in on this?
If you crack an egg on top of it and it's not sizzling, you probably don't have an issue.
The egg test.
I have had a few devices that I thought, the coffee will never get cold if I just put my cup on top of that. Let's go to the next question.
Yeah, this one's from David Brady, New York City, New York. What kind of front screen projection, gauze/scrim, would you recommend for a performance where seeing participants on stage clearly is needed?
Alex Lindsay is going to attack this.
I'm David. I think I need you to explain a little bit more about what you're doing. Is it a scrim that you want to project against, but still see the stage? Is that
That's how I read it.
I don't know what I don't know what to put it there. I'm going to let Courtney talk about it while I think about that a little bit.
Yeah, this is one of those things where you may be in a company like Rosebrand looking for some actual scrim material that does that. Courtney, what do you think?
Yeah, it's a thing called theatrical scrims that are designed for projecting light so that you can project an image and conceal the people behind it by darkening the stage behind it. Then you see only what's projected on the scrim. And then as you dim down what's projected on the scrim and bring up the lights on the stage, then you see through the scrim to what's on the back. There's a company, this one's called MosquitoCurtains.com, cleverly enough, like mosquito netting, that makes these theatrical scrims to order. And they have them in a variety of colors here. There's a silver, white, and a black. If you're going to be projecting on it, you probably want to have either the silver or the white, depending upon how much light you want, how well you want to see through them. But they're an open pore scrim that they're designed to be able to see through when lighting is behind them and not see through them. And see the projected image when the projected image is brighter than the image behind them. So look for theatrical scrims that are designed for doing just that, if that's what you're intending on doing.
Alex?
I couldn't think of the name of it while I was trying to answer that first. If what you're looking for, also look for hologram gauze. So hologram gauze is it's for doing 3D kind of. They sometimes layer them and they'll do 3D effects for stage. But hologram gauze is probably the most modern way to do that.
Sounds like a fun project, David. Come back and show us a picture when you get it done. Next question.
From Ronny Hofsø in Tromsø, Norway, here on the panel. I know the UVC out of an ATEM Constellation 1ME can act up, and last week I experienced something really upsetting. Switching to an incoming laptop running PowerPoint, it froze or made the UVC glitch while all SDI out was working. Any ideas?
Yeah, and Ronnie's going to come in and help us understand exactly what he's looking for. Ronnie?
Yeah, so what is going on here is probably something going on from the computer doing the presentation at the podium. We just had it inserted and converted to SDI. SDI is working perfectly for all others, and there was nothing wrong with this particular SDI cable. So the thing that actually made this happen was we had a PowerPoint coming in on that channel, and when I was using the cameras only, switching, everything was working perfectly. But in the moment I switched to that source, going out to program, all the SDI outputs were working. So I output the signals to different Ultra Studios that is going into Teams machines, etc. But the UVC going to one of the inputs in Mimo Live was just acting up. Sometimes it just froze a still picture of the camera person. Sometimes it changed to the presentation, but it was glitchy and it was locking up. And that happened only on the UVC output when I was using that particular presentation machine as a selected input. And that is out of my... I don't understand that.
Well, both Alexander and Alex are going to see if they can. I'm going to see if they can help. Alexander Knight?
Okay, so what I'm about to say, I'm not saying that there's any correlation with specifically that the USB UVC was at fault here, but for anything serious, I would not rely on that. If you do have an available output, I would just use something like a Roland UVC encoder or one of the Aja U-taps. First of all, the color quality is way better, and they are more reliable. You don't get the dreaded gray, although I haven't seen the gray issue in a while, but I just don't trust it. I've just been burned too many times. The other question that I had, Ronnie, is, did you have I don't know if it was a Mac or I guess it could have been a Mac or a PC that you were running, but was the frame rate that was coming out of that HDMI out, which I assume you converted to SDI, was it the exact same frame rate as the entire pipeline, or what the Constellation was set to?
No, probably not. And the bad thing was we had a Decimator standing by, and we didn't have the chance to change to that. If I knew this machine was going onto the podium and causing these types of trouble, I, of course, would run that through a Decimator and just have a consistent signal coming into that ATEM. So I think you are into something. There is something going on with the scalers or the frame rate conversion inside the Constellation that only causes something to get fried on the UVC and keep all the other SDI outputs okay. So we use Ultra Studio recorders as input to most of the machines in this scenario. So the UVC is not like deadly important, but I just experienced this problem on the UVC. So more like a test and get confirmation that the UVC is not to be trusted.
Alex Lindsay, you want to dive in?
How was the computer connected to the ATEM?
So HDMI coming out of the computer, and I think it was a Dell, maybe a HP, and we couldn't control it. And then it goes into bidirectional, so Blackmagic bidirectional, then with 3G down the line into the ATEM.
Yeah. I also think I would test the bidirectional, because it has more information in it that's going in there. So I think what you want, I mean, obviously a Decimator is where I mean, when we connect computers to our switchers, other than in my home, like when I'm plugged in here, if I'm doing something for work, it goes through a Teranex, a proper Teranex, or it goes through a Decimator, one or the other. I tend to lean towards the Teranexes when I can do it because their latency is lower than the Decimator. But we definitely don't want to have especially, I mean, I'll be flat out. We don't want PCs plugged into our stuff without going through something, because their handshake is messy, and so they, a Mac will just kind of figure out what it needs to do. Sometimes it figures out too much, but usually it does a pretty good job. On a PC, we will always put it through some kind of frame converter before we touch anything else, because they're just messy. So, but what I would say is the other thing I would experiment with, like now you have like a little lab to play with it, like you've got this issue, try it with the bidirectional if you still have the PC laying around, and see if it still glitches. Then switch to a dumb HDMI to SDI converter, just a little Blackmagic one that's like $48. See if it still does that. Like, I think that it may be that the delivery from I think it may be the bidirectional converter, because it's doing a lot more than the regular one. And I think that might be what would be unusual for the switcher.
Ronnie, you want to get back in?
Yeah, it was just affecting the UVC. So all the other SDI outputs was working perfectly.
I still think that it's more information coming in from that thing. Now, the other thing that most of our stuff, when it's going in and out, we're using the mini Ultra Studios, not the micro ones, but the mini ones, the little half U or third U or whatever that we, those are the ones that we kind of use for I/O to get in and out of things.
If nothing else, it shows you how professionals try to solve problems in the theoretical world. I always love listening to these discussions, because it's a process of people holding how things normally work in their brains and trying to figure out what could possibly be wrong. It's imaginary, but it's cool.
This is all like little things. Like, one thing is that obviously in rehearsal, we always want to try to plug everything in that's ever going to go into the computer. And if we don't know what it is, then we put a layer if we don't know what's going to come to us, we always put a layer of some kind of converter in between. I used to own 6 Folsoms. These were the frame converters, and they were a couple $1,000s each. So like maybe $6,000 each, I think, actually. They were and these would let you scale and do all kinds of other stuff. And they have DVI in, VGA in, HDMI in and out, SDI in and out. And so to me, the fact that I can plug a computer straight into the switcher is like, ooh, look at that. I'm old enough to go, oh, that's still cool that we can even, it might glitch every once in a while, but it's really cool because I used to have so much hardware just to get computers to work properly with my switchers.
The old days, we used to call those frame shakers. I don't care what comes into it. When it goes out, it has to be right. So do whatever you need to in the middle.
Yeah, we had to shift them. It was a weird thing when we did Hangouts. The Hangout, you couldn't hide the URL for the Hangout, and you don't want to broadcast that because people would type it in. You don't think someone will type the whole thing in? They will. And so we had to scale it up by 102%, or scale it to 102%. And so we had every kit had one just to do that one little thing. Like, we'd open up the Hangout and go, and the whole image just go, and that was it.
Next question.
This one's from Tim Snyder in Louisville, Kentucky. As a follow-up question, if we change from SDI Level B to SDI Level A, does everything in the chain need to Level A, like our Ursa Broadcast G2s, hyperdecks, etc.?
Alex, what do you think?
I probably would, to be safe, but I don't think they do. I think that usually the Blackmagic stuff is pretty good at handshaking between the two. It's the older, or it's the more traditional equipment that tends to not be able to see one or the other. So you shouldn't have to do that. Although if I switch the switcher to SDIA, I probably would go through and switch them all to SDIA just to be sure. But you shouldn't have to.
By the way, in the middle of all this tech talk, I should remind you, if you value what we do here, there are a few ways you can help us. You can like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can volunteer if you want to come and be a part of the team that puts all this together. Great group of people, and you will learn more than you can imagine. Or if you want to simply donate, you can donate at officehours.global/donate. All right, next question.
This one's from Nick Batt in Bath. Looking for an affordable 4K recorder which can downscale output to HD at the same time to go into an ATEM.
Alex?
I need to know what affordable is for you, Nick. so I need to know what are you trying to spend? $200 or $300 pounds or 500, I think that the hyperdeck would do it, but I'm trying to think of the 4K hyperdeck is still pretty expensive. So that's the only thing that I would, the hyperdecks I think will take it in, record it, and would do the handshake to hand it back. But I'm not I don't know for sure whether it'll do that or not, because I tend to downscale or upscale with a separate unit. So these are, and I don't think that the big hyperdecks would do this. I think the smaller ones might make that handshake and conversion.
Courtney Gooden?
Yeah, I was thinking the Atomos Ninjas that'll record 4K. It depends on what kind of recording you want to do. Do you want to record H.265 or you want to record RAW? ProRes? Depends on your recording format that you're looking at for that 4K. The Atomos, you can get them as cheap as about, $699, $499, that neighborhood. So you might look at them. I'm not sure, and they have HDMI inputs or SDI inputs. I'm not sure if they have A downscaled HDMI output if you're recording with a 4K input, though. I'm not sure about that. Atomos Ninjas. Look at that. See if that has what'll work for you.
Jason Beisch?
My first thought, so the 1/2 RU hyperdecks that are right behind me, I believe will do this in that they will allow the 4K pass-through, but will record in 1080. I'm not sure if they do it the other way around, so sorry, I'm not positive.
Next question.
Pedro G. Gonzalez III in Washington, D.C., looking at purchasing the Sony FX2 when looking at lenses. Are Cine lenses better than photography lenses? How do they differ with autofocus?
Oh, okay. A little can of worms being opened here. Ronnie Hofsoy is going to start us off.
There is a few things that differ these lenses. The most obvious thing is that they sometimes have this gear around the iris, the focus, and the zoom. The other thing is that it has vastly reduced focus breathing and zoom breathing. So that means when you're changing the zoom, there will be absolutely no or minimal change to the focus that you have focused on. And the opposite is that when you change its focus, you will not see the field of view change that much. On a photo lens, that is very, very prevalent. So you will see that immediately. And especially for when you are changing something live, and not just reframing and then cut to it. So you can use photo lenses if you're just reframing and then cut to that camera. Use Cine lenses if you're going to do a little bit more advanced work. And of course, there is a picture quality question as well. So I won't be going into that.
Alex?
Yeah, Mickey said that professional cinema and video lenses maintain a constant aperture across the zoom range. Our parafocal have focus and zoom rings that have at least 300 degrees of travel, gearing built right into the lens, have the same lens, physical lens sizes across the same lens family. And he says they never use still lenses for video, cinema or video. He says it maintains the set. And parafocal, of course, means that so what happens is with a parafocal lens is that you focus the back and focus the front, and then you can zoom. You can zoom through, and you'll stay in focus on the way through. That when you see operators zoom in, focus, and pull back, you can do that with a parafocal lens. You cannot do that with a still lens, so it won't work. We do see people do that with still lenses, and they can't figure out why everything's a little out of focus. So anyway, so because they see someone else do it, and they're like, "Oh, I can do that." I will say that for a lot of less expensive things, I have some still lenses that I use, and they work just fine for little projects. But for anything that I'm getting paid for, generally I'm using some version of this. There is no, typically with the film lenses, there's not going to be any autofocus. You're gonna have gears, and you're gonna control them. You're not gonna. That's one of the things that you start to kind of move towards. You just have to decide what you need these to do. If you're going to use this like I use my Sony as a web camera, then you probably want autofocus, and a still lens is fine. If you're really going to start using those, the thing that I would say is that with Cine lenses, I rent them most of the time. I don't buy them because they're really expensive, and I don't use them often enough to make it worth it.
Yeah, I'm just going to say two completely different tasks. A photography lens is designed for the operator to get it where they want and expose a frame, period, end of stub. That's its job. Cine lens is totally different. That's to open up an iris and to stay sending a signal through a range of motion, movements, and things like that. So all the controls are to allow that to happen on the Cine lens, and there's no reason to build all that stuff into the photography lens. They can be of the same quality glass and things like that, but the operation system is just designed for two very separate purposes. Next question.
Graham Cardwell in Belfast, Northern Ireland, is asking, just started thinking about streaming an event from a hotel ballroom. We have PCs running wirecast, 2 HDMI cameras, and a graphics laptop. Considering buying an ATEM, should we look at entry-level or up a few notches?
Alex, what's your advice?
I'd recommend 2ME. So here's the problem is that the 2ME has a super source, and everything below it doesn't, and you're going to want it. So that if you're going to go to an ATEM, look for I would start at the 2ME. Then you just need to decide what resolution, whether it's going to be HD or 4K. I don't think they make it. I think the 8K is just the Constellation, but the larger Constellation. But and that just depends on what you're going to do with it down the road. I do enough 4K stuff that I need all of my switchers to be, all the work switchers to be 4K. But anyway, so that's what I would look at. But I wouldn't get anything below a 2ME because you will run into the need for the super source pretty quickly.
Let's see if we can sneak one more in real quick.
Funsak Dorji is asking, my Samsung T5 USB-C cable stopped working. Any recommendations for a replacement? Thanks.
And Ronnie Hossoy is going to start us off.
Yeah, really quick. I have two vendors that I purchase cables from. One is the OWC, which has an amazing quality on the cables. They also provide me with the absolute best Thunderbolt 5 cables. So just have a look at their site. The other provider is something called Angelbird, and that is mostly for Europeans since the OWC is United States and Angelbird is in Europe. They also have a good selection of really, really high quality cables. We used a few of these tethering cables at IBC and they are flawless. They are really, really good.
Jason Page.
Yeah, what Ronnie said, any USB 3.2 Generation 2 cable will work in this case. Just make sure it is perfectly class compliant.
Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, you're looking for just 3.2 is what you're look for that little number on it, and it needs to say that somewhere in it. It's not going to be an unmarked USB-C that you should be putting on the drive.
Hey, thank you to everybody who is involved in the show today. To our producers, those of you who ask questions, put your questions into the mix. You drive the show, and without you, we are nothing. So thank you very much for taking the time to form your questions correctly, and it's submitted to the show. If you didn't get your question into the show today, because we had a few that did not, if you put them in through the QR code, they will stay persistent in our system. If you sent them in through the Mukana system, they will go back to your notes field so you can bring them back tomorrow. To the panelists, thank you so much, everybody, for showing up and adding your voices to the hopefully voices of reason to help everybody solve problems. We do an amazing job, and I'm always just astonished at how much I learn every day from everybody who comes in and volunteers to these panels. So thank you all very much. And to our amazing back-end crew, we never stop without thanking them because they are amazing and they are legion back there quietly doing all sorts of tasks. We've been doing this for going on 5 years, and the amount of expertise that shows up everywhere in this show just astonishes me every day. So, and no more than our back-end crew. We just thank you all very, very much. Our stats for today, that the Electroversal, if you'd gone around to get this information, you would have traveled 46,000 miles, 75,000 kilometers. That is 368 million metric bananas for scale. No, these are U.S. standard bananas, and we have a lot of them in the panels. So we have multiple bananas. Thank you all. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Are those real bananas, Ron?
I think it's actually Caribbean banana scale.
The ones in Norway are definitely metric bananas.
It's like an American banana, but a lot more relaxed. It's like, it's close.
How big is the Norwegian banana, then? That's we don't know.
Yeah, those are...
It's the same.
They're metric bananas, okay?
This is the one we got in Las Vegas from you guys.
Is there an ISO banana? Let's submit these to the International Standards Organization.
I wouldn't dare.
Hey, everybody. Nice to see you all. Thank you. We'll see you tomorrow.
Adios.